Okay, so welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast. I can't remember my own podcast at times, what it's called. Gavin Dale, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No problem. So, Gavin, then we're going to get to know you a little bit, but for the listeners and the viewers, you've had a pretty good year so far, haven't you?
It's shaping up pretty well for April. I'm pretty happy with what's happened so far, certainly.
Yeah, a good start. So yeah, obviously at the start of the year you had the first place at the Arc of Attrition, notoriously hard, brutal race down in Cornwall, and then you've just topped it off with first place at the Lakes Traverse, the 100. It was the 100k, wasn't it? Yeah, 100k.
It was, yeah. I'll leave the 300k to other people
for next year.
Maybe.
So for the listeners and the viewers, then could you just sort of give us like a rundown of your background in running, how you got into running, and how you got to where you are now, winning two very high profile UK races, what it's taken to get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's been I guess it's been about 5 or 6 years now, of sort of going through all the steps of it. I started off very much kind of in road running. I was living down in Bristol at the time, so just got into sort of the half marathon distance, and was doing that for a couple of years, at about, and sort of reasonably fast, never kind of top level, but I was enjoying it for a while, and I for a couple of years, and then just sort of got a bit sick of the road distance, or sort of the road style of running, getting very hung up on exact splits, and always trying to shave those couple of seconds off each mile, and it's just it was quite draining, I found. And then that kind of coincided with moving out to New Zealand. So at the start of 2020, I moved out there and lived out there for 2.5 years, which was quite kind of a life-changing experience, really. And I got there just before the pandemic, so it was all kind of quite chaotic and quite a big change. But over there, I mean, they have just some of the most stunning trails in the world, I would say. They have these fantastic mountains and massive national parks where you can just go and play. And a lot of their trails are sort of, long distance ones. So it kind of then became a natural way of just exploring. And I very much then fell into sort of the trail and the ultra running scene, and really kind of, just fell in love with that over there. And slowly then kind of built up the training and started, I did kind of my first couple of ultras, had some pretty steep learning curves, made all the kind of classic mistakes, whether that's, going out too hard and then falling apart, or not eating enough, and did it all really, but just learned every time and kept kind of, taking those lessons on and getting more and more confident. And so towards kind of the end of my time there was when I was just starting to get kind of towards the top of the field and get a bit more competitive in some of their races. And then I came back here, back to the UK, sort of at the end of summer last year, and moved up to the Lake District, basically because I needed somewhere with hills. And I'd always heard good things about kind of the Lake District, and obviously, it's iconic for its fell running, and for the running community up here. So I kind of moved up to Ambleside, in the summer of last year, and just fell in love with it, for the scenery and for everything about it. Really, the running community is just fantastic. And then sort of did a couple of races last year, but nothing. Took me a while to kind of settle in, I think, and find my feet again a bit. Got involved in a few more kind of the local fell races. I did the Bob Graham round, and then sort of just started got that itch to get back to a proper ultra again. I really enjoy doing a mix. I like doing shorter races. I like going hard on stuff, but I was missing that sort of long distance style of racing, which was then where the Arc came into it. And then, yeah, so far this year, sort of went for the Arc, which was a bit of an unknown for me of how that was going to go. But put in a lot of training, a lot of work for it, and then had just a brilliant day out. And everything kind of worked really well. And then same, yeah, just last week with the Lakes Traverse, it was just another one where kind of put in a lot of hard work and training for it. It was a bit more of a known to me in terms of some of the area. I was familiar with more of the trails for this one, and yeah, just had a good day out with it, really.
So does the Lakes Traverse feel like you kind of like your local ultra kind of thing? Is it?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was a nice mix because kind of the first section of it I wasn't familiar with. So starting from the coast at St. Bees, and actually the first kind of 14, 15 miles of it were quite unnerving because it was mostly flat trail or road. And it was fast, you know. I was going a lot faster than I'm used to going in ultra distance. So it was kind of worrying me, and I was thinking, oh God, I'm going to blow up on this. But then, yeah, once I hit kind of Ennerdale, from there I started to get into territory I knew, and then, yeah, it did feel a bit more like home turf. And a couple of my housemates came out to kind of watch along on the track as well, which is really lovely, sort of going through Grasmere in that area.
So you didn't feel like your road running days kind of kicked in that first section, and did it just feel a bit alien now after running trails for so long and staying away from roads?
Yeah, I mean, I like to do a bit of road training, still kind of week on week. You know, I'll go out on the road just as a bit of a contrast, really, and it gives you a chance to work on things that you don't necessarily work on trail. But running for that length of time and that distance, because I ran it with Mark Derbyshire, and we clocked the half marathon we clocked about 1:42, which, you know, isn't in kind of road times, that's not particularly fast, but in trail time, especially in kind of ultra distance, it was quite unnerving. And yeah, it was strange to be going back to that style.
So the whole thing with Mark then, obviously, were you together the whole time then?
Literally from the very start. And I said to him just before we set off, I kind of said, my plan here is to stick with you for as long as I can. And he said, well, mine's pretty much the same. And yeah, as it turned out, that was going to be for the whole thing. But yeah, we were probably never more than about 30, 40 meters apart from each other. There was never any sort of back and forth, really.
That's interesting, because I've been in that situation before, but it's been like later on in a race. And do you think it's that you spend so much time? I mean, ultras are quite social anyway, aren't they? Even when you're competitive, you're still chatting to people, aren't you? And you kind of build up like a mini in-race relationship, don't you? Where it's like you kind of locked into this friendship that you've got because you're both in this race. Did it get to the point in the race where, I mean, before, you know, was there any points in the race where you thought, I should have sort of left him behind now, or made a break and tried to put a gap on him? Did it get to the point where you just like, it feels wrong to even think about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either of us ever had a point where well, certainly not for me, that I felt like that it was right to make a break, like, because I don't think there was never a point where it felt like one of us was flagging or one was kind of stronger than the other. Because sometimes you can kind of naturally feel that, you know, you'll run so far with somebody and then you just get that sense that, you know, maybe you're a little bit stronger on certain sections, whether that's uphill or downhill, and you're just naturally pulling away. But it just never kind of happened. And I thought it would. I thought, particularly kind of coming as you get closer to the end, you know, it is usually the case that one of you will will just have that little bit more in them. But I think we just kind of brought out the best in each other. You know, of neither of us kind of we tired at about the exact same rate essentially, and then we were talking about what time we might get, and Mark kept saying, oh, you know, it's going to be this, or we might get this, and it always felt like when we were talking about that, we were talking about it, you know, as the two of us, and then yeah, we got to it was about 5 miles from the end, and we hadn't discussed it by this point, but you know, it was becoming more and more apparent that neither of us was kind of stronger or weaker than the other. And Mark just said kind of, he was like, so what are we going to do then? and we just had a chat, and we just said like, and I kind of said, you know, like I am really happy with how we both run this, and like I don't feel a need to, you know, for it to be one or the other at the moment. Like I'm really happy with the joint finish, and he was as well. Because I think by that point, yeah, we'd gone, you know, we'd spent the whole day together, we'd worked together on everything. It didn't, and it felt, and I said the same thing actually about running with Ellis. Like it almost feels like, on the Arc of Attrition, that is, it feels like you're working against the course almost. You kind of team up and then you start, yeah, you kind of all, you know, I think in the Arc with Ellis, it was very much, you know, when we were in the night together, that was, you know, it was very tough, and you're working there to kind of support each other and against that kind of darkness in the course. And with this, I think Mark and I both went into it kind of with an eye on the course record, because we'd actually been out the week before with Dan Weller, who had the course record. The three of us had gone running together, and Mark and I had kind of talked about it, and we both kind of had an eye for that record, that we could probably do something to it. So then, yeah, that was kind of almost the target, was more about that time, and getting a time that we both kind of felt was a good achievement for us, rather than who was faster than the other. And we pushed each other the whole way. I mean, like even to the very end, the final 400 meters, we sprinted essentially. And I think we were both kind of worried about the other one, not necessarily that the other one would try and out sprint them or anything, but it was more that just we both wanted to kind of put our absolute best into it. So yeah, we were, by the end, you know, we were running all the uphills and things, and there's towards the final kind of 10k of it, there's these long gradual uphills that on a normal day you wouldn't look twice at, but sort of when you're about 95k in or 90k in, you're sort of looking at them like, Christ, this is gonna but you know, we kind of, again, we were able to get that from each other, you know, we both kind of shared in the suffering essentially.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can achieve with a bit of teamwork, isn't it? Because you know, it always, you can suffer on your own, can't you? But sometimes suffering with somebody else just seems like the nicer option, doesn't it? When you know you're going to suffer in a race.
It was quite fun. I mean, we just, you know, towards the end, it was, you know, there was no kind of trying to bluff it against each other. You know, we were quite open, and Mark was complaining about his hip, I was complaining about like my glutes and the calves, and it's quite nice, yeah, to kind of have somebody just to, because normally you are alone by that point, and you are, you know, you can end up in a little bit of a kind of world of pain in your own head. So actually just being able to voice it out loud to someone else is quite nice.
Yeah, that's good. So as far as your sort of approach to the race then, with your training and everything, I didn't realize that you guys had trained together before. Is that something you do regularly then, or was it just specifically with this race in mind, was it?
It was just, yeah, sort of a one-off thing, because him and Dan wanted to basically get a bit more hill work in, because they both live in fairly flat areas, and there's a local round here, 23 before Teeth, which is quite close to where I live. So they kind of eyed that up and wanted to basically just come and do that, with me acting as sort of the navigation guide for them. So yeah, I mostly trained sort of solo, but that was just a nice chance to kind of get out with about a 50k day. It was just a chance, because they're sort of busy training for UTS at the moment. And I'm never going to say no to to a long day out.
Yeah, that's it. The offer of a long day out with friends in the hills is one that you can't really turn down, is it? If you're a trail
What
runner.
it's all about, really. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for your sort of training then, are you coached? Do you coach yourself?
Self-coached. So I try to do a mix of having kind of a rough plan in mind and a rough idea of what I should be doing, but then kind of allowing plenty of flexibility within that. Partly based on feel, partly based on weather. I'll aim for kind of a certain mileage or time on feet per week, and then just try and get a mix of sessions in, basically. So, plenty of just kind of steady miles. I love just if the weather's good, I'm quite happy just going out for a day and just exploring, really. And then on other days, I will try and kind of mix that in with a few shorter tempo sessions, and the odd park run and things, but then also just kind of longer runs where I'll maybe do a mixture of intensities. And yeah, I try to just really just train on feel as much as I can, and consistency. I've found at the moment what seems to be really working for me is if I can get sort of 4 to 6 weeks of around sort of, for me, it's about 80 to 85 miles a week. And that's a number kind of that I've gradually increased over several years. It's taken me quite a while to get to a point where I feel confident with that. And for me, yeah, at the moment, that seems to be what's working, and just within that, trying to vary terrain and intensity and style.
Yeah, I think, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'll be 29 in a few weeks.
Yeah, so I was looking at an Instagram post by Martin. I forgot his last name now. VO2 Max Coaching.
I think I've seen the same one saying about it's not just about mileage. Yeah,
that was it. I thought it was quite interesting, wasn't it? Sort of talking about people's like sweet spot and how that can change over time, and I was, as you said that, I was thinking my sort of 2 or 3 years ago, that was what I aimed for, sort of 80 to 85, going up to 90 miles a week, leading up to a race that I was really targeting. But now, like 3 years later and a few injuries later, I realized that, and I'm 43, I've realized that that's unsustainable for me, that kind of mileage. As much as I'd love to do it, I'd be quite happy to run all day. It sort of goes against my age and my, possibly not genetics, but age at this point, and I'm wearing joints. And now sort of 50 to 60 miles, I'd like to be getting 60 to 70. We'll see how the knee goes this year. But I thought that post that he put on was quite reassuring. The fact that he was sort of saying, he's a really experienced coach, and he was sort of saying that volume isn't necessarily like king, but volume changes during your life. As you age, volume could go up, could go down. So I just think what are your thoughts about how you're training? Sort of, are you happy with the structure that you've got now, or do you feel like there's going to be changes, or will that sort of only happen if you train for a specific race that requires you to shift your training massively?
I think at the moment I'm really happy with where I am, and I've sort of done a lot of work to get to that point, because I think so much of it, there's definitely kind of a quality over quantity, I think is really important. And I think so much of it is about finding what works for you, because you can read a post to agree or disagree with every type of training there is out there. And I've listened to so many different athletes, who will come at it from a different angle, and they'll say, this is what works, this isn't. And, some people will preach the 80-20, others will swear that that's no good at all. And I think so much of it is about finding what works for yourself. And I mean, something I'm really enjoying at the moment is just variety. And that's not just in training, but in racing. for me, kind of in May, for example, I'm going back to just much shorter fell races, nothing over an hour in time, really. And that's, that will be a big change for me in terms of intensity and style. But I really like to have that contrast, because then, it means you're not getting too stuck in just one thing. When I first got into ultras, I think the mistake I made was that I got into this mindset that, well, if you're doing ultras, it's all about long, slow, steady training, and it's about that strength and stamina. And I lost all my kind of top end speed, and I kind of stopped thinking about form and about quality, and took out all those kind of high intensity reps and things. And it took me a while to then realize that actually, I've not got what I did have. I've lost something here. And for me, then it's been the last year or so has been about, playing around with that and trying different things until I found what works for me. Which is, and it won't be often that I'll go out and do, I hate doing something like an 800-meter set of reps or something. And I will very, very rarely go and do something like that. But I'll do things like a 5K on, 5K off, and do that about 4 times or something, where you vary between running at a low intensity and then at your kind of threshold, but just flicking back and forth multiple times. And, that's things that I've looked at and found have worked for me. But I really think it's for everybody, it is slightly different. And, it's really easy to look at, especially kind of the pro athletes and people right at the top of the game, and you see that when they're training 100 miles a week and things, you think, and I've done it. I've looked at those and thought, oh God, that's where I need to be, and I wish I could do that. And I don't think you necessarily need to, and if you want that, then you need to be aware that you've got to work very gradually towards that. It's not an instant thing for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think your background in half marathon running, road running, then has sort of put you in good stead as far as knowing how to structure workouts? Because I know I spoke to interviewed Kim Collinson, and he was sort of saying how he almost has to force himself to go and do some road stuff and to do some speed work, because living in the lakes, it's so easy to just run out of your door and go run straight up a fell, straight up the mountain, and you can get stuck in that routine of just going and doing that because it's there. Do you find you have to really force yourself to go and do the flatter stuff, speed work and stuff?
I definitely find it a bit easier for having done it in the past. I think it's a lot rarer to find a fell runner who then turns to road than it is a road runner who turns to fell. I don't know if I'd say I fully enjoy it. I don't love it in the way I do going in the hills, but I do get something from it, and I appreciate it, because it is just a chance it's a totally different style of running, and it does give you a chance sometimes, to be able to focus just on a certain pace, or, I find it really helpful for kind of just getting on my form again and making sure that my form is good. That you kind of, in those moments on a trail marathon where you might be in something, a bit more runnable or a bit faster, that you can just flick back into that. And a lot of long distance ones and ultras and things, they do have long sections of road, like I said, in the Lakes Traverse, you had that. There were plenty of bits in the Arc as well with that. And I think you need to train on road as well to become just as comfortable on those areas.
Yeah, I was thinking that. How did your training compare for the Arc compared to, because obviously that's you've gone from 100 miler to 100k. Obviously the emphasis is sort of going to be on more speed for the Traverse than it was for the Arc, or are you doing sort of equal amounts for both approaches to those races?
Yeah, I thought you might ask that, and I was trying to think if I'd actually done anything differently. To be honest with you, I didn't consider it that much. I certainly didn't make any big changes in the training. I think, yeah, I was fairly happy with the sort of the variety I already had in my training. And I had, you know, plenty of kind of, I do a lot of hills each week, so I was confident with that. And I had a fairly good idea of what sort of terrain would be on this, so I knew kind of in terms of the descents and the technical work that I'd be okay. So it was, yeah, it was pretty similar in terms of structure to what I did for the Arc, to be honest.
Yeah. So moving forward, then, what's sort of next on your hit list of races? What have you got coming up, or what have your sort of bucket list races that you're planning on doing?
I mean, the bucket list is never ending because I didn't really do any trail or ultra running in the UK before I left for New Zealand. Now that I'm back here, I'm literally looking at everything. I just want to do all of it. So I've already kind of started a list for 2024 of stuff I've missed this year that I want to go back and do. But this year, yeah, is really, for me, it's really exciting because there's so many different things. So in May, I'm doing, some kind of shorter fell races in the Lake District. I've got Fairfield, which is kind of my local, and an uphill only, part of the Mountain Champs, which I love running uphill compared to downhill. So I'm quite looking forward to, for once, being able to just charge uphill and then not stress about going back down it. And then, yeah, a couple of sort of more ultras, mostly Lake District based through the summer. So there's the Kong Ultra, which is sort of an 80k mountain fell race with about 5,500 meters climbing it. And then the Helvellyn Sky Ultra in July as well, which is another kind of very technical.
What's the distance with that?
That, I want to say it's about 57k or so. It's something along that, I think. And again, a huge amount of climb in it. Can't remember exactly how much, but again, you're looking something around 4,000 or 5,000 meters, I think. And loads of, it kind of takes in striding edge and swirl edge and lots of kind of quite technical rocky sections.
Really technical stuff, yeah. Because I did Tour de Helvellyn last year before. Yeah, and you don't
I
quite
was just looking at that. Yeah.
You don't quite go up to the very top. You kind of go up and over and back down. Is it sticks? Is it going on sticks? Which way do you go?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like a lollipop. So it's like a lollipop shape. You don't quite go to the summit, sort of side and down and round and then back. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, lovely race. Yeah, you're going to do that then, December. Yeah,
I only just found out about it, so a lot of these I'm still kind of hearing about for the first time. But Mark actually told me about it because we kept running through bits on Saturday, and he'd be like, "I think this is in the Tour de Helvellyn," and yeah, so I was looking it up earlier, and yes, that definitely, it'd be a perfect one actually in the winter when there's not as much going on. I quite like now that kind of winter ultra running.
It's like the week before. It's like the week before Christmas, so it's quite nice. Sort of end to the year, bit of a hurrah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what have you got planned then for 2024? Can you reveal what you got your sights set on for that? Reveal.
I guess the main one I would love to have a go at in 2024 is UTS. Whether that's the 100k or the 100 mile, I'm not sure yet. I kind of had a look at it this year because when I finished Arc, sort of it felt like everyone I spoke to after Arc was heading over to UTS, and it kind of felt like, oh, I want to be there as well. And I just had a look at it and had to think about it, and I kind of didn't want to rush into it. Sort of got plenty of time at the moment, and I think if I did it this year, it felt like it would just be kind of a bit last minute, and I wouldn't be quite prepared for it. I've got other things that I'm excited for anyway at the moment. So yeah, I think next year.
Sensible approach, that is.
It's restrained. Yeah, I'm trying to be.
It's quite easy, isn't it, when when you love something so much to just say yes to everything. And I think
the
danger of that, isn't there?
Yeah, and I'd like to. I've got a few. I'd like to have a go at a few solo things as well. Kind of this year and in next year and going forward generally. I quite enjoy that as a contrast to the racing. I like to do a bit of both. So there's a few kind of rounds or FKTs and different things that I'm sort of just slowly scoping out at the moment and having a look at. I actually texted Mark earlier, Mark Derbyshire, about I had, just out of pure curiosity, I was looking at the FKT for the Coast to Coast, which is Damien Hall has. And I was just looking at it, and then I texted Mark and said, "What do you reckon on that time?" And he said, "Yeah, I've just been looking at that as well." So I don't know which of us will get to it first, but we're both definitely having a little
good project.
A little look at that.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Wow.
I know I'm always banging on about the spine on my podcast, but have you got any thoughts on whether you would do any of the spine races?
Not yet. I think the full thing is just a bit too much for me at the moment. I love tracking it. I love watching it. I'm not sure I'm ready for that much suffering just yet. But potentially one of the shorter distances, I think would be quite fun just to be a part of that whole scene. I don't know with the full thing. I feel like at some point it might I might come around to it in time. But at the moment, I just watch in horror. I see all the photos and I just feel sorry for them.
The sort of the other distances, I'd kind of been sort of looking at it for years, and I did the very first sprint that they did in the summer of 20 or 21. I can't remember when it was, and it was all I sort of get the impression it was kind of viewed as just like the baby spine of just doing, but they're becoming now like races in their own right.
Yeah.
Like the sprint, 46 miles, and then the Challenger South 108, Challenger North 160. They're becoming like their own. There's a lot of notoriety with doing well in those races now, as opposed to them just being like stepping stones to the main event, which is the full race. I think with your speed and your technical abilities, this going for like the sprint, the winter sprint sort of record, or that was just set recently by John Shields. That's one that would be doable, and going for something like that, or the record for the Challenger South, all in your sort of wheelhouse.
Yeah, and I think I'm quite enjoying at the moment sticking in that, sort of like I wouldn't want to do more than probably 2 of 100-mile races, more than kind of 2 a year at the moment, because I think with those they do take more out of you, and going beyond that as well, like you are just into longer periods of recovery. And at the moment I'm really enjoying the fact that I can do stuff of a slightly not much shorter but slightly shorter than that, and kind of bounce back pretty quickly and keep that kind of that speed and that freshness. So yeah, I'm quite lucky at the moment. Like I have got the time, as long as I don't break something, fingers crossed, then I've got a few years to enjoy it, and try all the different races and distances and have a go at it all, really.
That's good. It's a good approach to sort of not dive in, because somebody else with your sort of success that you've had early in the year could think, right, I'm on a roll, this is it, and start putting in for every single race going. And I think you've got quite a sensible approach to racing, the fact that you've got plenty of years ahead of you racing, so why rush when you can drag it out and enjoy it over many years?
It's hard at times. there are times where I'm like, oh, well, there's only 9 days between those races. I probably could. And then I'm kind of, trying to. I did it. The very first race I did was a half marathon in Bristol, and I injured myself in that and got a stress fracture and ended up with kind of 6 weeks off with no running at all. And I think weirdly, it was one of the best things that could have happened at the start of my running, because it did just teach me that kind of, you have to be patient, and you have to, sometimes you've just got to wait and play the long game a little bit.
Yeah, running as a way of teaching you humility if you haven't got it.
Oh yeah,
definitely. Awesome. So for people that are interested in what you're doing, they can, where's the best place for them to follow you? Is it just look at your Instagram? Are you active on there? What social media do you sort of use?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best way. I'm reasonably, I kind of try and put up, any races and upcoming plans, and a lot of the time it's just photos of the Lake District whenever it's sunny, which isn't too often at the moment, but hopefully it's going to be more soon. And I put all my stuff on Strava as well, so all my kind of training and everything is up on there to see. And yeah, that's kind of all there to see, really.
Brilliant. Excellent. Right, well, I appreciate you coming on and giving some of your time, and hopefully people, the viewers and listeners, will get to know a little bit more about you and watch what you're going to be up to next. I'll be looking forward to seeing you taking down the coast to coast record of Damien.
You heard it here first. Yeah, I know. I feel like I've laid the gauntlet out now.
You've said it on video now, so you're gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Gavin. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.